Chapter 6. A Voice in the Silence. Jackson Walker didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. Not after life had taught him that things didn't just fall into place, they unraveled, slowly, and left you to gather the threads alone. He sat by the wide window of his London apartment, the city skyline stretching out behind the rain-streaked glass. A mug of black coffee sat untouched beside him, long gone cold. His laptop screen blinked with unread emails. His phone buzzed with calls he wouldn't return. But his eyes were on something else entirely. A pale cream envelope. No name, no signature, just the weight of someone's unfiltered thoughts sealed inside. 3 days ago, he'd been driving back from a late shoot when Chris Connor's voice had filled his car speakers. Now, we usually share song requests, dedications, maybe even the occasional love confession. But this week, we received something different. Jackson had almost switched stations. Almost, but something stopped him. That letter, read aloud, by Chris, felt like someone reaching directly into his guarded chest and tapping on a door he didn't know was still locked. The next morning, Jackson had called Chris. "That letter from last night. The anonymous one. Can I read it?" Chris had paused on the other end. "Didn't think you as the sentimental type, Walker." "I'm not," Jackson replied. "That's why I need to." Intrigued, Chris had sent him a scanned copy, preserving the girl's anonymity but letting the words through. And now, Jackson held it in his hands. "A girl with no name, no face, only truth. Sometimes, I wish I could talk to someone who didn't know my face." He'd read that line a dozen times, maybe more. It echoed something deep inside him, something buried. It hit a part of him he hadn't let anyone reach in a long time, so he wrote back. He didn't know who she was. Maybe she was 16, maybe 60, but she felt real and rare. He'd responded that same night, not out of obligation, but because, for the first time in a long while, he wanted to speak back. Chris, sensing something quietly important unfolding, had offered to act as the messenger. "If she writes again," he had said, "I'll pass your reply along. No names, just letters. Old school style," he said, teasing him. And now, a second letter had arrived, her handwriting. Again, he slid the paper from the envelope, unfolding it carefully, like it might fall apart in his hands. "Dear someone who's listening, you asked for something real. Here's the truth. I feel like I've always been trying to be the person others want me to be. The perfect daughter, the polite friend, the smiling student. And sometimes I don't even know who I am beneath all that. But when I wrote to you, I didn't feel like I had to pretend. That means more than you can imagine. So here's to letters without names, words without faces, and truths without judgment. Tell me what's your truth. Yours, the girl without a name." Jackson stared at the final line. He smiled just a little. She didn't want his name. She wanted his truth. That was harder to give than any introduction. He reached for his pen and pulled out a plain sheet of paper. His words came slower this time, deliberate, honest. "Dear girl without a name, here's my truth. I don't let people in. Not easily. I've learned that even those closest to you can become strangers in the blink of an eye. So I stopped expecting anything from anyone. But your letter, it felt like someone finally knocked on a door I didn't realize I had locked. So thank you for knocking. If you want to keep writing, I'll keep listening. From someone who doesn't know how to start again." He sealed the envelope and stared at it for a long moment. Then he stood, grabbed his coat, and stepped into the rain. Somewhere out there, she was listening. And so was he. Chapter 7. The Letter with No Name. It had been a long day, the kind of day where even chamomile tea couldn't soothe her. Hannah Dawson lay sprawled on her bed, arms flung out like she was waiting to be lifted away by a breeze that never came. She hadn't written since her last letter. A part of her told herself it was silly she wasn't expecting a reply. Another part had been hoping. Quietly, secretly, the radio was playing softly in the background, her comfort noise. And then it happened. "We got something special again this week," Chris Connor's voice said, warm and familiar as ever. Looks like someone answered the girl without a name. An unsigned letter. I don't know who either of them are, but I'm here to pass the message on. She shot upright in bed and turned up the volume, every nerve in her body suddenly awake. Chris began to read. Dear girl without a name, here's my truth. I don't let people in. Not easily. I've learned that even those closest to you can become strangers in the blink of an eye. So I stopped expecting anything from anyone. But your letter, it felt like someone finally knocked on a door I didn't realize I had locked. So thank you for knocking. If you want to keep writing, I'll keep listening. From someone who doesn't know how to start again. Her heart flipped. She listened to the words again, not even realizing she was holding her breath. Someone wrote back. She didn't know why that made her so warm inside. Maybe because it meant she wasn't invisible. Maybe because someone out there felt exactly the same. And suddenly, she couldn't wait to write again. Chapter 8. Letters and Little Truths. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Hannah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Chris's voice echoing in her mind. Not his words, exactly, but the ones that came after. If you want to keep writing, I'll keep listening. She smiled, wide and hopelessly giddy, then grabbed her notebook, the one she never let anyone touch. And this time, she didn't hesitate. OD text. Dear stranger, you don't know how much it meant to hear your words. It was like someone reached through the airwaves and said, I see you, and for once, I believed it. Truth is, I've always been surrounded by people, family, friends, noisy, neighbors, but sometimes I feel lonelier in a crowded room than I do when I'm alone. Maybe that's why I wrote, and maybe that's why your reply mattered so much. Here's a little truth about me. I can never finish a cup of tea while it's still hot. I always forget about it halfway, and by the time I remember, it's gone cold. But I still drink it anyway. Doesn't that say something about me? I don't know what exactly. Maybe that I hold on to long, even when things lose their warmth. But I'm trying to change that, starting with this letter. So, what's your little truth? Yours, the girl without a name. She folded the paper gently, as if it might bruise, and walked quietly through the early morning mist. The streets were silent, the world still half asleep. She dropped the letter into the same mailbox outside the station, heart pounding with quiet hope. Someone somewhere was listening. Chapter 9. A Letter in the Dark. Jackson Walker sat back in the leather chair of his private office, his fingers strumming lightly on the desk. The late evening hours were always his favorite when the world was quieter, and he could just be himself for a little while. He'd spend most of the day filming scenes for an upcoming movie and managing a handful of interviews for his latest drama. As an actor and idol, his life was always in the public eye, and sometimes it was overwhelming. People wanted pieces of him, wanted to know his thoughts, his plans, his feelings. It was exhausting, despite the fame and accolades, but tonight, it wasn't about his next movie or his fan base. Tonight, it was about something that had stirred inside him over the past week. The anonymous letter he'd received. He picked up the envelope, the same one that had been placed on his desk earlier by his assistant. Inside, the familiar, delicate handwriting greeted him. Dear stranger. His eyes softened as he read the opening line. This wasn't just a letter, it was a connection, and he had to be honest. It felt like she was speaking directly to him. You don't know how much it meant to hear your words. It was like someone reached through the airwaves and said, I see you, and for once, I believed it. Jackson ran a hand through his hair, his heart picking up pace. He wasn't sure why, but her words had already begun to feel like a lifeline. Maybe it was the way she had written, so honestly, so freely. Her words lingered in his mind. I see you. He had read that line over and over. In his world, everyone wanted something from him, but no one saw him, truly saw him, beyond the image they admired. God, he thought, this isn't just some random fan letter. This was something deeper, something that made him feel like he was standing on the edge of something unknown. Truth is, I've always been surrounded by people, family, friends, noisy neighbors, but sometimes I feel lonelier in a crowded room than I do when I'm alone. He stopped reading for a moment. Lonely in a crowd. It struck him, that line. He knew what it was like to feel that way. No matter how many people surrounded him, fans at concerts, reporters at press conferences, or even his colleagues, he had never felt more alone than when he was playing a part, being someone else, for the sake of his image. Maybe that's why I wrote, and maybe that's why your reply mattered so much. Jackson set the letter down, staring at the words. He wasn't sure what it was about this letter that had such a strong pull on him. Maybe it was the anonymity, the honesty, or the vulnerability in every line. Here's a little truth about me. I can never finish a cup of tea while it's still hot. I always forget about it halfway, and by the time I remember, it's gone cold, and I still drink it anyway. A quiet laugh escaped his lips. He could picture her perfectly, a girl who forgot her tea, who lived in little moments that made her more human than anyone he knew. Doesn't that say something about me? I don't know what exactly. Maybe that I hold on to long, even when things lose their warmth. Her words cut through him. He couldn't help but think about himself in that moment. He had spent years holding on to his career, his public image, the expectations of others. But inside, he wondered if any of it really mattered. But I'm trying to change that. Starting with this letter. He let out a breath, a quiet laugh escaping his lips. This letter, this stranger, was making him rethink everything. Was it possible for him to change, to let go of the image and just be himself? He sat up straighter and reached for his pen. Tonight wasn't about movie scripts or fan expectations. Tonight, it was about something real, something he couldn't ignore. Dear girl without a name, here's my truth. I'm not sure I can answer your question yet. Not completely. But I know this your letter didn't just get my attention. It got something else. Something that's been hiding in the dark for a long time. Maybe it's my turn to write back. Maybe it's my turn to answer a question I've been avoiding for a while. I'll keep listening if you keep writing. From someone who doesn't have all the answers, but is ready to find them. Jackson sealed the envelope, his mind buzzing with thoughts he had been pushing away for years. He had no idea where this would go or if she'd ever even see his reply. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't care. The anonymity, the connection, it felt like a breath of fresh air, and he was willing to take that risk. Chapter 10. Unheard Truths. The air was quiet, the kind of hush that blankets a small town just after dusk. Hannah sat by her bedroom window, her arms wrapped around her knees. A steaming cup of chamomile tea sat forgotten beside her. She had written back. Another anonymous letter, another piece of her soul folded into paper and dropped into the same old radio station mailbox. She hadn't expected anything, and yet here she was, waiting. Her fingers hovered over the volume knob of the tiny wooden radio on her shelf. When the soft, familiar tune of the program's intro music began to play, her heart skipped. Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Voices Between the Lines. I'm Chris Connor, but tonight, I'm just a voice reading another letter from someone who moved us last week. Her breath caught. This was it. She called herself the girl without a name, and tonight, she wrote again. Hannah's pulse quickened. Her words, raw and gentle, all at once spoke of cold tea and warmer truths. And now, here's a reply, not just from me, but from someone out there who felt what she felt. She leaned forward, every part of her focused. The voice reading the reply was the same, smooth, calm, comforting, but this time, something had shifted in it. A weight, maybe, a sincerity she hadn't noticed before. Dear girl without a name, here's my truth. I'm not sure I can answer your question yet. Not completely. But I know this your letter didn't just get my attention. It got something else. Something that's been hiding in the dark for a long time. Maybe it's my turn to write back. Maybe it's my turn to answer a question I've been avoiding for a while. I'll keep listening if you keep writing. From someone who doesn't have all the answers, but is ready to find them. Hannah's eyes welled up. She wiped them quickly, laughing at herself. "You're such a sap," she whispered to herself. But it wasn't just the letter, it was her piece, a connection between strangers. She sat back and whispered to the quiet night. Funny how a stranger can feel so close. Outside, the stars blinked like they were in on the secret too. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.